Ladies and gentlemen, I've recently had an epiphany that I don't like other people using their brains. I think they are stupid, less intelligent than me, and overall make bad decisions. So with this scientifically backed evidence, I've decided to go into the world of Stellaris and spread my superior thinking capabilities to the universe by absorbing their filthy, low IQ flesh bags into my own. Some say this would be inhumane, but this is not a human, it is a bird, and by the end of the video, you'll understand why I'll personally be defunding Peter. Meet the One, a perfect single organism capable of doing complex tasks at the speed of 37 quantum supercomputers. The One might look like a pile of mutated dog feces, but do not let that fool you. It's actually a quick learner and a very robust mutated pile of dog feces.
Dylan! You son of a bitch!
Naturally, I gave myself one simple mission: unify the galaxy under one mind. Peacefully, of course, as long as you consider peaceful to include light assimilation and the occasional restructuring of DNA. It wasn't long before we detected our first signs of life, so I knew I had to find them and uplift them, so we decided to prepare to integrate this intelligence. We started by focusing very hard and exploring the nearby star systems until we found signs of their spaceships, so I knew I was on the right direction. Shortly after, we met the Molyneux Conglomerate, a mega-corporation, ruthless capital society that looks like this, which is important because only 1 week after meeting them, they closed their borders and look like this. I can only assume they created some sort of advanced AI system that decided the biggest problem to world safety was emotions and free will. With similar beliefs, I thought we could be some sort of allies, but by the next time I checked in on them, they were hostile. So I gave up trying to make friends and focused my attention somewhere else. Somewhere like this system that had an abundance of resources and several planets inhabited by a primitive species. So I took my ships down there to assimilate them, and they did some weird voodoo magic, kicked me out and closed their hyperlane system. That was the last I ever heard of them, so now they exist within my empire like some sort of non-invasive cancer.
Super cancer.
My next encounter was with a civilization so primitive they still thought fire was impressive. I was ready to uplift them, but instead they called me a monster and invented 3 new religions dedicated to killing me. However, I did not care. I was not afraid of long pointy sticks and proceeded to assimilate them into my biomass. Around the same time, the bird people made contact. I didn't know it then, but they would go on to inspire a vendetta so intense that I would eventually find myself standing in the park, throwing rocks at actual birds and muttering about intergalactic revenge. But before that, robot crabs, and not the good kind. The kind the government sends to infect your genitalia and report the size to the International Statistical Institute, or the ISI for short, so that you won't feel as bad when your wife cheats on you with a man named Jamal and you wonder why your children do not look like you. But they told me they were not open for business, so I decided to hold a council meeting before I realized I am the council and I chose to go to war with the crabs. They didn't put up much of a fight because they forgot to manufacture opposable thumbs. Now, come here. I've been keeping a secret from you. I have the ability to convert giant space fauna to aid me in war. So now I have a giant mold-infested dildo spinning towards my enemies, having them question,
"What the fuck is this piece of shit?"
As a 10 million kilometer long void worm comes to penetrate their ship, like a man on experimental drugs trying to start a family with a Russian sex doll. But this isn't a plastic blow-up doll. It's a spaceship and it cannot be impregnated. It wasn't long after the robot crab war that I stumbled across a species cosplaying as tentacle hentai, which only further reassured me that free thinking is a terrible thing. So after another council meeting with myself, I knew the right thing to do was to assimilate them. So I declared war and sent my warships onto their worlds, only to discover I don't want to talk about it. Just know I now have a therapist I go to weekly, but she's not very helpful. She just tells me to accept Jamal into my life. But I digress. The war was going well. My ships and giant void worms were taking over systems with ease. until I realized that the squid people and the bird people were friends, and now I have an army of seed peckers coming to penetrate me from behind, and I'm not into that. I immediately panicked and tried to sue for peace with the squids, but I couldn't. So I panicked harder and sent my armies to plug the hole the birdmen are currently forcing into my empire. After successfully defeating their forces, I returned back to the main mission of purging the universe of the calamari rings, and eventually corner them onto a planet called Trunday and invade their last planet, permanently removing them from the universe. But the war wasn't over. The bird people continued to attack me alongside other bird people situated on the other side of the universe. But they didn't do anything. They just sat outside my borders, shouting racial slurs and calling me retarded.
You fucking little retard.
This imitation tactic lasted a few months before they eventually asked for peace. And peace there was. Besides the constant supply of death threats for about 10 years, I took this time to strengthen my empire and armies so I could purge the local bird population, because the smell of their white fecal matter has been getting out of control and has been slowly leaking into my empire. So enough was enough, and I declared a full frontal assault onto their worlds. This was going great for about 5 seconds before I came to the realization that my entire army was up here, and I forgot they boarded me down here. But I was okay with this because this led them into a false state of overconfidence, thinking they had a chance in this war. They did not. I quickly turned my largest army around and headed straight for them. This took a lot longer than expected, and they ended up right next to my home system. And I'll be honest with you, at this point, I thought I was going to be stripped of all of my rights and bound to a life of being cucked, so I had already started looking for my chair. But somewhere and somehow, my army managed to get there just in time to stop the bird people from taking my home planet. After that, I took back my star system and shot any birds that stood in my way. I had those ships stay and protect my borders while I had my other army taking the worlds on the other side and was met with very little resistance. They did try and sue for peace, but it went a little bit like this.
Broken back, a broken pubis, a broken leg, an infected urethra.
It was about this time that I noticed that I had 0 alloys and a negative income. This is not good, but I reassured myself that everything is going according to plan because the current plan was to mass sell all of my materials for alloys. But in the end, we managed to take a large portion of their systems and sue for peace. At this point, I felt overwhelmingly powerful, like no one could stop me.
Nobody going to stop me.
So I spent some time focusing on myself, like fixing my economy, expanding my income of resources, fixing my empire's infrastructure, and making friends with a giant spinning cylinder. I also built a superhighway of hyper relays that allows me to quickly move across my empire. There was also a huge migration of void worms that was spreading throughout the universe. I took advantage and further increased my power. I truly felt like I was unstoppable, and with the daily insults of the bird people and the peace treaty finally expiring, I decided that it was time to assimilate the last of them. When I went onto the declare war screen, I had noticed they had some allies, but I wasn't worried. What I hadn't noticed is the scroll bar. And the next thing I knew, there was an army of 50,000, but for whatever reason, they sent it in and then sent it out. I thought they were scared of me, but anyway, it allowed me to clean up a few of their smaller armies and my confidence grew even greater. My confidence was immediately crushed when an army of 80,000 came out of nowhere. This is the part when I realized
We fucked up.
So I sent my armies to confront theirs, which pretty much went as well as you would expect. They wiped the floor with me and I was stuck with an army of 98,000 on my border. I tried to offer peace, but they told me there can be no peace. They started to take my systems and I knew throwing armies into them would generally not be a good idea. So I mustered all of my forces into one location and bolstered my defenses, hoping I can overpower them. But as soon as they got close, they ran away to the other side of the border. At this point, I was annoyed. So after quickly rushing my armies over to theirs, I noticed their forces were split, and I attacked their smaller fleets, thinking I could turn this into my favor. I was quickly mistaken as their main force popped up. I quickly retreated and did whatever I could do to bolster my army. I had amassed over 110,000 firepower in my fleet, which left me feeling quite confident as their army boarded my own. As I was preparing myself for what most likely would have been the deciding factor in this war, they ran away again. And at this point, I was genuinely losing my shit, so I did the same thing and moved my army and waited. Then they ran away again. It was at this point I was contemplating whether playing this game or running into moving traffic was more painful. But I had enough. I caught up to them and I attacked them first with the entire might of my fleet. I then had no fleet, and the power of friendship had overcome my vast superior intellect, and I watched my home system being overrun with birds. I was powerless and watched as my empire was taken from me swiftly. As I sat there on my last planet, I remembered a quote of a great man, Gandhi, who once said, "Nobody can hurt me without my permission." And I did not give them my permission, so therefore they didn't really win, and if they didn't win, I didn't lose, which means I did succeed. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing so I know you enjoyed this type of content.